So now we're gonna add a filter that will return a list only with those threads that the user is a member. So let's write this filter in here. It's a ref, and you get the ref and where. We're gonna check inside members, and then we're going to use the current user ID. And then if the user equals true, we're gonna get all the threads that the current user it's included inside the members object, and we're gonna return that collection. Now we need to get this current user ID. So let's just pull in straight from auth service. So now if you look at our chat, we no longer see this guy's message. Because if you check in here, this is the current user on this side, and he doesn't belong in there, so it didn't show. He doesn't see this message. So just with this line of code, we can set some security for our users. Now we're going to create a condition that will add a CSS class to the message, depending if the message is inbound or outbound. So let's go back to our code editor. Inside the message, so we're gonna use the ng class. This ng class we can use to dynamically add CSS class to our components. This comes from Angular. So if it's inbound, incoming. If it's outbound, not incoming. So let's go and add this function. In our chat message component, we are going to add a function to check if it's incoming or not. Check incoming. Here we need the current user ID there. And if this message dot sender and user. So if there is a message sender and if there is a user, we're going ahead with the function. If not, it won't do anything, but it also won't break our app. This dot incoming, we need to create this, and it's going to be a boolean. There, now we can use it. Because this dot message dot sender ID not equal to user, this user. Now let's just add the CSS class and we can check if it works. The class we gave to the component was outbound and inbound. So let's do inbound, set background color to light something, light cyan, and let's do the outbound, background color, a light gray here. So now we only get the outbound. Let's check the function. And here it is. The reason why everything is gray and not changing is because we need to execute this function. So in here we can just add it and save it, and it should work now. There you go. Hello? Mine is gray because I'm the sender and this one is receiving and it's the other color. Now you can play around with these colors and how you do your CSS, maybe move this to the other side. It's up to you. This is how you add dynamically the CSS. You create a condition where it's gonna check something and you use the ng class. We evaluate that and adding the CSS class in here. At the moment, if you go to our users and we create a chat, then we have in here, we need to add a last message, and it would be nice to add the name of the sender in here. We're also going to add a button here so they can remove this conversation. So let's go ahead and start. First, we're gonna create this delete function here. We're gonna add a material Angular menu to the chat detail. In the Angular components, I'm gonna go to menu. Here, this is what we're going to be adding on that corner. So it has a drop down, and you're gonna have a delete button in there. So let's copy this reference, and we're going to paste on our material module. Alt click. In the math toolbar, let's add a button, and with the math icon button class from the material Angular. Now inside we're going to add a math icon, this one called more vert. There you have it. We need to add a spacer so it flows to the other side. So in between the two buttons, let's add a span tag and give it a class of spacer. Okay. Now if you click on it, we need to add a trigger that will create a drop down here. So on the bottom, let's create a trigger. And this comes from material Angular, math menu trigger 4. Let's call it menu. Now we're going to use that math menu that we imported. Math menu. We need to pass that menu ID we gave in there. Okay. It's all coming from material Angular. And inside we're going to create another button, and we're gonna pass a math menu item. And we're gonna give this a click event. We're gonna create a delete function in here. So, but before that, let's just add a math icon here again with a delete icon. And I'm going to create a span and write delete. This should work. Let's check it out. Now if you click, you're gonna have an error. Let's go ahead and create this one. In the chat details, we're going to create the function that we call another function within our thread service. So down here, let's just after the ng, let's create a function called delete. And we're going to use this .thread service. We're gonna need to import it. Private service was, forget to import if you don't have the auto import feature. Service, yeah. And let's create a function called delete. Delete thread. And this you're gonna need to pass an ID. To send them an ID. So let's create this ID here. Let's see this .thread ID. Now let's create this variable in here on the top, just below the view child, and we're gonna make this a string. Okay, now in order to get this ID, we have a thread function called getThreads. So let's pull that in here. Make one called getThreads. Let's create an observable in here so we can store the data. Threads, observable, imports from RxJS, and this will be a thread array. Let's import thread model. Okay, now we can continue with our getThread function. This .threads and will be equal to this .thread service, and I'm going to use the getThreads function from there. Okay, now we need to subscribe to the threads and get a specific thread out of it. For that, let's just do this .threads.subscribe, and then we're gonna get a thread from it, single one, and in here we're going to map it so we can get our information. Data and this dot thread ID will be equal to data.id. So in here you are pulling all threads, then you are subscribing to a single thread, mapping it, getting a data object back, and linking the data.id, which is the thread object, to this ID string. Now we can pass this thread ID to this delete thread function we're gonna create. So we'll just save it, and let's go to our thread here. This one should work. There, no more error. And let's go to our thread service and create this delete function. We're going to use a new JavaScript feature called async await. So let's start building, and I'll explain. Delete thread. We're gonna get an ID from the chat detail. This is what we get in there. Just keep the same naming for consistency. So let's create a const called batch. This is to reference the Firebase method. Firebase.firestore batch. Going to use that later on. Let's create a query variable to store all the objects from the collections. It's going to be this.fas.collection. I'm going to pass it the address. Here's going to be that thread ID message, and then we're going to pass the reference and do a get. So this is going to get all the information, all the objects from the collection. But for us to continue, we need to wait for this to be resolved, to return all the objects for us. And this is why we need the async await. We're gonna add the await in here. So we're gonna create the function, and it will stop in here until all the data is returned, and then we can continue with it. Let's console log this query so we can see. Query. Now we can call query for each, and we're gonna look through all the objects received. Let's console log doc so we can see what is returning. Let's also add a reference in here saying deleting doc ref. I will show you what the reference is for. Now we can do batch.delete and pass the doc ref. So after we do this, we need to commit the changes. So we do a batch commit, and then let's just do a then, and in here we're going to delete our database object, because this function here, it will delete only the message, the objects inside the message collection, but then we need to delete the thread itself. So in here we're gonna call the FAS doc, and we're going to pass again the chats, and then we're gonna use the thread ID. So then just call delete, and we should be done. So let's see what's happening here. Before I continue, I'm going to comment this out and comment this batch deleting here as well. So I'm going back to my gallery, so it picks up our ID again. And you click on that. I'm gonna click delete. Here we have the query snapshot, which is this console log in here, the query. We are not getting the data from here. This console log is not working. We do only see one console log in there, which is query log. Query log is the object from here. Let's just set it back to query. So let's check what happened in here. We create our thread. It's looking for a thread service, the function, and then we're subscribing, mapping. What we're missing is we need to initialize this function. There. So let's just try now. Now we get a bunch of objects. So let me undock this one. And this is the query one. And now we get a query document. And this is where I'm getting the reference from. Here in the thread components, I'm using the doc.ref, which is coming from here. The document reference is this one. This we're going to use to get the ID and to get the information so we can delete it. So now you're receiving this back from this await function. Then we can go ahead and do our deleting process. So we're gonna delete. Let me pull up the Firebase console. We have our chat and our message. So let's go ahead and click delete. To get only the query snapshot. It does the batch delete, it preps it, but it doesn't commit. So we need to call the commit function in here. So after you prep everything, you need to commit it. We're going to do that right now. Let's get the Firebase again. And it's gonna reinitialize the component. Click delete. Now deleting object, and you see everything disappears. To the root of our database, there's only users in here. So let's create a few more chats. I am this one, so I'm gonna click on this one. Now if I go to chat, I have these two in here. So let's add some messages. I'm gonna add a bunch in here. Now on the other one, I'm also gonna add a bunch. Let me refresh the database so we see our information. We see our messages. So chats. Both of them has a collection of messages. So now let's just delete. Click delete. Deleting. Everything's there. Our other chat is still up. We go back to chats. Let's delete it again. And now it disappears. Now our delete function works. We can delete our thread and its collection. Now when you create a user, a chat, we have in here, we don't have a last message and we are displaying the chat ID in here. So let's add a last message in here and also the sender name in there. So the easiest way of doing that is to create some more information in the thread model. We have the avatar. So let's add the thread creator, the string, and also last message. So we're going to push the creator in here the same way as we did the avatar. Now it's asking for those information. So after the avatar, let's do the creator. And last message. Now we need to give that information. So let's add const creator. There will be this.auth.state.display name. But let's add a fallback. So it will display the email in case the user doesn't have a display name yet. And when the chat is created, when the thread is created, we won't have any last message. So let's just set it to null. Let's delete this message because it's not correct. And let's create it again. Thread created. If you take a look in our database, we have a last message equals to null, and we have a creator in here. So now let's add that creator that is in the single thread component. Here instead of the ID, let's call it for the creator. Just go back in there. Now we have Flavio in there. Now let's do the last message. The last message, we need to go where the message is created. So the chat input. And here we're going to create a function which is going to push the last message to this thread. Let's start creating this function. First, let's go to our threads and we're going to create the function in here. Let's call it save last message. And for it to work, we need to know which thread to save to, and we need to know the message. So we're gonna ask it from the component, the channel ID and the message. Here we're gonna create an object with that data. Say last message. Now we're gonna return. And the reason we need to create an object in here is that we are going to save as a document, and we need to add a key value pair. So the last message is the key gonna be stored in the database, and the message is the value we're gonna be sending to it. Return this, return, we call this FAS doc. Now we need to get the address again. We're gonna pass the channel ID. Then just need to call set, and here we're gonna pass the data object we created. Data. So just pay attention when you're sending data. You're using the set method, that you don't destroy all your database. If you just want to add one field, you need to add merge, otherwise you destroy the whole data. So now with this function done, we can call it from our component. Let's go back to the input. We're gonna need to import the thread service, so we use it in here. Private. Go. It was don't forget to import if you don't have the auto import feature on your editor. So let's create a function to save that last message. We're gonna need a channel ID and a message, and here we're gonna call the thread service and pull in that save last message function method we created. Channel ID, message. Now we can call it in here inside. Just after we send the message, we can just call save last ID message. Let's add the last message to our HTML. This is the thread. Instead of this one, we're going to pass the thread.last message. Now it's empty. We don't have any last message at the moment. So let me just open a new window, and we're going to send a last message in here. There, and there we have it. The last message sent. So every time we're going to write something, we have it in there. Now let's finish up our module with and save it to Git. So our Git status. As we don't have any file to add, we can use the short version of the Git commit. Instead of passing the git add, we can add -a and m, so we can do both at the same time. Stage the changes and commit with a message at the same time. Okay, so now if you do a git branch, or in the chat, let's merge the chat branch. So now let's do the git merge. We're going to merge the chat. Remember to do the --no fast forward, so we can save the branch history, and -m to pass a message. Here we're just merging chat feature. It's done. Now let's just delete the chat branch. Git branch -d for delete and chat. Okay, git branch. Congratulations, now you have a chat app to add to your future projects.